My name is Keith Hare. I wear several hats, but the hat with which I'm talking today is as the convener of ISO IEC JTC 1SC32 WG3, which is the International Standards Committee responsible for the SQL database language standard and for the GQL database language standard. In the short amount of time I have today, I want to give you a quick introduction to the standards process, because we use a lot of acronyms that don't really mean anything until you know more about the process and what they mean. And then talk a little bit about the timelines for both the SQL and particularly the SQL PGQ work and the GQL work. So there'll be a quiz later, but the database language work goes on in a working group that's underneath the Data Management and Interchange Subcommittee, which is underneath a joint technical committee between both ISO and IEC. And the fact of this being a joint technical committee has some interesting bureaucratic implications that I'm not going to explain to you today, but if you get a group of WG3 people in the room, then we can get into all sorts of arcane topics that you may or may not be interested in. But the big picture is that the work really happens in working group 3. A lot of the bureaucratic work happens at the SC32 level, and then international ballots mostly take place at the JTC1 level, where there are 35 national bodies. So this is the hierarchy that we're dealing with. A couple of acronyms, new work item, working draft, committee draft, and DIS are the ones that I'm going to focus on the most when I talk about the schedule. So a committee draft ballot is when a document goes out to the WG3 committee and actually to SC32, and experts review the draft and write comments. And that's one of the steps in progression, and it's one of the ways of focusing attention on a document and getting people to actually read it. So the flow chart is this that I actually originally copied from some slides that a guy by the name of Jan Michels did. But basically, we work on a draft until we decide it's ready. When it's ready, we do a CD ballot. That generates a bunch of comments. We resolve the comments, and when we think we're done, we move on to what's called a draft international standards ballot. One of the important things to remember about this sequence is that by the time a document gets to the DIS ballot, the only thing that can change really is editorial things. And so while it takes a while to get through all of these steps, in terms of the technical content, by the time we do a DIS ballot, the technical content is pretty stable. So who participates? We currently have experts from 10 national bodies active in WG3. A while back, I went through the different national bodies and attempted to identify where those experts, what organizations those experts were a part of. So Ant Financial gave a talk earlier. People from the Ant Financial group participated in the process. In Germany, I listed Second Quadrant, and this is actually out of date because Second Quadrant got bought out by somebody else who is a Postgres, does a lot of work on the Postgres product. Anyhow, if you look at this, there's a lot of organizations involved. If you look at the US in a second, I'll list even more organizations that are involved, and there's a lot of overlap between the standards process and LDBC. In the US, we have a hierarchy that mirrors the international hierarchy, but most of the work really gets done in the orange box on the bottom right, the DM32 expert groups. These used to be called ad hocs, but because of changes in the INCITS organization, they're now called expert groups. The functions hasn't changed, only the name has changed to confuse anybody who's not already involved. There are actually multiple things going on in the US DM32 committee. And so I've listed the organizations and partitioned them by where it looks to me like their interest is. And so we've got the traditional SQL vendors who are mostly doing SQL. We have a number of vendors involved who are mostly focusing on GQL, the property graph language. And there's some other work going on with streaming data that I don't have time to talk about, but could be really interesting in a year or two. From a standards standpoint, one of the interesting things about the property graph work is that it's brought a fair number of new participants into the standards process. And so to my mind has been very useful to keep the standards process alive, the database language standards process alive and moving. Most of the work in DM32 is done in two expert groups. The property graph queries, which is SQL PGQ, and in the GQL expert groups. And these two committees alternate Tuesdays, and they have 2-hour web conferences on alternate weeks. And there is a lot of overlap between the two groups. Basically, the expert groups agree on design, and the papers are sort of passed through DM32 and then submitted to WG3. Within the group, we have two types of proposals. We either have discussion papers that are talking about the trade-offs or design alternatives, and those eventually lead to concrete change proposals. Within WG3, until a little over a year ago, we met in week-long meetings 2 or 3 times a year, but it seemed to make sense last year to change that to monthly meetings, monthly web conferences, since it was not possible to have face-to-face meetings. And so we're currently meeting about once a month in currently 3-hour sessions, 3 3-hour sessions a month.